as the WNBA wraps up its season, getting ready to crown a champion between Connecticut and Las Vegas. The NBA getting ready to kick off a brand new season, training camp right around the corner. This story coming down surprises few, but some of the details were having people in raising a few eyebrows. This comes to us from Baxter Holmes over on ESPN. Robert Sarver, owner of the NBA's Phoenix Suns and the WNBA's Phoenix Mercury, has been suspended 1 year and fined $10 million by the NBA as a result of an investigation into the Suns franchise. The NBA announced the punishment Tuesday, saying the investigation found that during his time with the Suns and Mercury, Sarver used the N-word at least 5 times, quote, when recounting the statements of others. There was also instances of inequitable conduct towards female employees. The NBA said in its statement, including sex-related comments and inappropriate comments on employees' appearances. The NBA commissioned an investigation after ESPN published a story in November 2021, detailing allegations of racism and misogyny during Sarver's 17 years as owner. While the NBA stated that Sarver, quote, cooperated fully with the investigative process, league sources told ESPN's Baxter Holmes and Adrian Wojnarowski that he was unaccepting of the idea that he deserved a 1-year suspension, a $10 million fine for his behavior. The punitive part of the process became largely acrimonious, sources said. The investigation, led by New York-based law firm, found that Sarver, quote, engaged in conduct that clearly violated common workplace standards as reflected in team and league rules and policies. Quote, while I disagree with some of the particulars of the NBA report, I would like to apologize for my words and actions that offended our employees, Sarver said in a statement through the Suns. Quote, I take full responsibility for what I have done. I'm sorry for causing the pain and these errors in judgment and not consistent with my personal philosophy or values. I accept the consequences of the NBA's decision. This moment is an opportunity for me to demonstrate a capacity to learn and grow as we continue to build a working culture where every employee feels comfortable and valued, end quote. So this has gotten Chris Paul to talk. This has gotten LeBron James to talk. Every media pundit, every media company, everybody's been talking about what happened with Donald Sterling, what's going on with Dan Snyder. And, this is just another example of somebody who doesn't, one, understand boundaries, doesn't respect boundaries, doesn't respect the everyday person, is almost clueless in how the everyday person lives their life and what is appropriate and isn't appropriate. And let's not lose sight of him using the N-word and misogyny when he owns the Phoenix Mercury. We talk about the NBA being a predominantly black league, right? Obviously. So is the WNBA. And it's a league full of women. So how is this going to be okay? How is this going to be able to slide? If any of you listening to us here on the Sports Cubicle with the marvelous one, Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, and myself, Mike Mercado, we know that there are a lot of different sports shows you can listen to. One of them being the Dan Le Batard show. And they have Amino Hassan, who does a bunch of different shows on NBA radio and different podcasts. And he used to work in the front office with the Phoenix Suns. And he was somebody who was confirming a bunch of these stories and also giving new details on a bunch of different stories. And if you've been listening to him for a while, you saw this coming. And he brings up an interesting point along with a bunch of different people who have talked about this subject matter. What's it going to take for somebody like this to lose the team? Donald Sterling lost the team not only for the inflammatory words he said, but the fact that it was recorded. There is no actual proof in the sense of a video or a tape of this. Ray Rice was suspended, 3 games, 6 games before that tape came off of him punching his wife on the elevator. And as disgusting as it may sound, that is the difference between why Ray Rice was essentially kicked out of the league and when originally he was just suspended for a few games in the season. It's going to take something like that. This is the brunt of it. Now, we've heard that there are different sponsors that are going to jump out, that don't want to be associated with the Mercury or the Suns. But a lot of it's going to be the public pressure of the fan base, of the media, of the other owners. And if you want to be cynical, if you want to talk about some of the reality of this, owners don't want this to go through, or they're not necessarily ecstatic for this. There's a reason why Snyder is still around in the NFL. You can't start opening up Pandora's box if you're in these owners' position. Because what have they said? They start thinking to themselves, and they're thinking in their war brain, their war $1 billion brain. What have I said before that people are going to use or misconstrued or use to take me down? This PC culture, this woke culture, even though they're dropping inflammatory words. These owners are worried about that. They're worried about emails getting out, voicemails getting out, text messages getting out. And you saw that in this case. We're just compiled and an investigation happens. And these owners don't like that. These owners don't like people snooping around their stuff. And if the NBA isn't careful, this can continue. Now, we're not going to hear from him. And I think there is a chance that, depending on movements and how people take the story, maybe they push for something. But it's also the organization. It's the Phoenix Suns. It's not a national organization. It's not like Donald Sterling, who was talking about Magic Johnson, who has a franchise in Los Angeles. There's a lot of different circumstances that will give this traction, will give this legs. But I just, from the Brett Favre story earlier on of taking advantage of the welfare system, $5, $10, $15, $20 million allegedly, to this, to taking advantage of your employees, to not treating them with respect, to trying to brainwash them, to trying to do just different things and making people uncomfortable and using a place of power and influence in a negative way when you can do so much good. And it's just another story of that, of an owner and somebody with a lot of money who, with predominantly minority employees and underlings, taking advantage and being inappropriate and basically a dirtbag. And that's what we had in this story. But it's going to be fascinating to see. Chris Paul is the president of the union. How is he going to react with this? Devin Booker's a young star in this league. How is he going to handle this? An owner with not only an NBA team, but a WNBA team, the optics, the statistics of the race in those leagues. And the fact that it's not only a black league in both leagues, but the WNBA being a women's league. And this man being accused of using the N-word, racial slurs, and misogyny, sexual misconduct. It's a horrible story. It's a fascinating story. And it's something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on. Because how does this affect one of the better teams in the NBA? And an owner who's notoriously cheap getting fined so much money, does this actually need something? I mean, we know this is the equivalent of one of us getting charged $60. But if it's a cheap owner, it actually might bother him just a tad bit. But we want to know your thoughts about this story, as Robert Sarver has been suspended for a year, will not be allowed to be around the Phoenix Suns or the Phoenix Mercury after being found to use the N-word several times and also misconduct, misogyny at the workplace. Let us know your thoughts. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. It's the marvelous one, Dan Marver. It's Devin Tingle. It's Paul Chivari. I'm Mike Mercado.